So, when everyone talks about Jagdish Chandra Bose, if you ask a person what was it that Jagdish Chandra Bose discovered, then they say that Jagdish Chandra Bose discovered that the plants had life or plants have feelings and things like that. But actually it is not that what was discovered by Jagdish Chandra Bose. It was something more important. In fact, the starting point again as usual is Darwin. So Darwin was studying the plants, particularly how the plants cognize the environment around them. And then he suggested that the plant root tips may behave like the neurons. If you have seen the Avatar movie, you would have seen that the roots and all communicate and it creates a big kind of network. So it is called the root brain hypothesis. It was first proposed by Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin's son was Francis Darwin, who was actually a botanist. And Darwin also had another one basic concept, which is that if you are having a finished product, for example, our eyes, then it should have, if you look at the entire evolutionary web, you will be able to see all the stages of that. You will be able to see the corresponding things in everything. Like for example, a light sensitive receptor in a particular small organism, a neuron that responds to light in a particular organism. So you should be having a continuity. He suggested this. And when he suggested this, he specifically talked about plants like Venus flytrap and Mimosa pudica, the touch me not plant, where the electrical activities are very visible. And he said, if such visible electrical activities are there, there should be electrical activity in plants for the stimuli, for the irritants. It should be able to react. So you should be able to find it out. He wrote to a famous biologist of his time, botanist of his time. But that person was not able to find any electrical activity in most of the plants. What J.C. Bose did was, he discovered the electrical activity in plants. Without a nervous system, the plants were able to exhibit electrical activity when they were irritated, when they were given stimulus. He was able to demonstrate that. And science of his time was not ready to understand it. They thought that he was talking some kind of vitalism. But he was not talking vitalism. He was talking about a unity that cuts across the animal life and plant life, the mechanical life and the biological life as a whole. In fact, he specifically mentions that in this particular talk of his. He said that, the last he says, that I understand for the first time a little of the message proclaimed by my ancestors on the banks of the Ganges 30 centuries ago. They who see but one in all the changing manifoldness of this universe. Unto them belongs eternal truth, unto none else, unto none else. Now, what does this has to do with, again, the Tamil literature? Now, remember this, here, he is talking about the cognition in plants. And there is a wonderful work by two Chilean biologists, Francisco Varela and Humberto Maturana. You can remember these names and you can Google them and you can get the book. And it is a wonderful book. And they say that cognition is the basis of life. At a very cellular level, cognition is the basis of life. Now, if you take Tolkappiyam, Tolkappiyam has a way of dividing, of classifying life forms. And what is it that makes it the basis of this classification? Now, remember again, the classification itself may be outdated, it may not be scientific. The way in which he has classified. For example, he said there are living organisms with the one ability for cognition, Vor-arivu, Eer-arivu, Moond-arivu. So, if you see the entire classification in Aristotelian philosophy or everywhere else, cognition has not been made the basis of classification. Tolkappiyam makes cognition the basis of classification. And this again relates to Upanishad, where it says Pradipodha Vidditam, which means every pulsation of cognition is essentially a manifestation of consciousness itself. I think it is, power is gone or something, it's no problem. So here again you see that we have a knowledge system that can provide us frameworks not only to do science but also to experience science. Now, why was it that the entire Western world was not able to understand that particular aspect hinted by Charles Darwin? But today, if you see New Scientist or Scientific American, just go and Google about plant intelligence. I am not talking about the pseudoscience about plant intelligence that has been written by people like Peter Tompkins called The Secret Lives of Plants. I am not talking about that. I am talking about serious science stuff. You will be able to find that from Tel Aviv to MIT, there has been a lot of work that has been done on plant cognition, and they all say it starts with J.C. Bose. J.C. Bose was essentially far more advanced than his time. Why he was able to do that is because his framework was that of Vedanta. From that he started. And he was able to understand that across the diversities, there is a basic unity. Now, this is very important again in social sciences. Why I am saying it is important in social sciences is because now you take our society, there is a division. There is a tribal and non-tribal. From where did this division arise? And you have this term called Adivasi. See the term, Adivasi. So what exactly it means? Aborigine. Certain communities are Adivasis, but what about the remaining communities? The Indic term was Vanavasi. Now, what is the difference between a Vanavasi and Adivasi? When you say Adivasi, you essentially mean that only certain groups belong to can be seen as the sons of the soil. The others are outsiders. So, this is not something that has to do with the Indo-European people coming inside or outside. I am not entering into those at all. Right now, if you go to my place, then there are certain communities will tell, we alone belong to this place, you people are outsiders. This is happening again and again in each and every place. So what happened, for example, in a country like India, when this is taken very seriously, in Assam, 50 bigger migrant workers were killed because they were seen as outsiders. We are the sons of the soil, they are the outsiders. So this kind of frameworks based on linguistics and ethnic differences come from the colonial knowledge system, which sees these communities as distinct categories. Tribals are distinct categories, non-tribals are distinct categories. But is it true? Of course, that is what Thurston said to us, that is what Risley said to us. Herbert Risley discovered the nasal index. He studied the nasal index of Indian people. He invented even a law saying that if your nasal index is high, then your rank in the social status is 1. So it is inversely proportional. If you have a sharp nose, then your nasal index is 1. Your Varna is 1. If as your nose sharpness decreases, your Varna status decreases. So now you have the variance, right? Now you have people telling that the thickness of the dosa and this are directly or inversely proportional. So you have this. Now this we have internalized. This is because we have internalized all this. Now remember, from Darwin to J.C. Bose to Kumaraguruvara to Tolkappiyar, we don't see these as categories. We see them as continuum. There is a difference between seeing the things as categories and continuum. So I will give the example of Ilango Adigal. Now, whenever I give this talk, I give this specific example of Ilango Adigal. Ilango Adigal describes the tribals worshipping the goddess. Tribals worshipping the goddess. Even the Silappatikaram was written some 1300 to 1400 years ago. In the thickness of the South Indian forest, as Kannagi and Kovalan are going inside, they are seeing the tribals worshipping the goddess. And how they worship, Ilango Adigal describes it. So the goddess is wearing the skin of elephant over her. And in her hips, she is wearing the skin of the tiger. And she is standing on the head of a wild buffalo. Black head of a wild buffalo. So these are the first two lines. What are these two lines? These two lines define a fierce tribal goddess. Then you have the next two lines. Those two lines, they talk about a goddess who stands at the end of all the Vedas as the flame of Gnosis pervading everywhere. She permeates everywhere, and she is standing at the head of the Vedas, as the end of the Vedas, as the Gnosis, the flame of Gnosis. ஆனை தோல் போர்த்து புலியின் உரியுடுத்து காணத்தெருமை கருந்தலிமை நின்றாயால் வானோர் வணங்க மறைமேல் மறையாகி ஞான கொழுந்தாய் நடுக்கின்றியே நின்றாய். Those are the lines. Now, if we are to give these lines to our colonial ontologist or a Marxist historian or our dosa specialist, they would say that the first two lines talk about the Dravidian goddess, the next two lines talk about the Brahminical goddess. But what is the context in which Ilango Vadigal places it? The tribal or the tribals in a South Indian forest 1400 to 1500 years ago are worshipping a goddess who is simultaneously, organically, both the tribal goddess and the so-called high philosophical goddess. There is an organic unity, you cannot differentiate, you cannot distinguish that. Now, this is something that our sociologists should study, understand. If they understand that, their approach to our problems will be different. This is what I say. This is what I mean when I say we have to use the Indic knowledge systems. Whether it is the physical sciences, whether it is the biological or psychological sciences, or whether it is the social sciences. More importantly, in the social and the psychological sciences, we have to use these traditional knowledge systems. If we use it, then we will be able to create better artists, better scientists, better human beings who can understand and empathize with the humanity. Rather than create divisions, they will be able to build bridges. Thank you very much. If you have any questions.